Diamonds are formed under the worst conditions. Butterflies emerge after dying in a chrysalis. They liquefy. There's beauty after the pain. So if we can all just band together and go through this pain together, we're going to come out the other side stronger and more beautiful than ever.
Welcome to the Mr. Bill podcast. I'm Bill's manager, Anand Harsh. Today we have a slightly different episode for you. In the fallout from the grooming allegations against Lauren Ashton, aka Bassnectar, which led to his subsequent retirement from music, two longtime collaborators, Mimi Page and ill.Gates, released an open letter and a personal video, respectively, detailing their acknowledgement of the victims and their stories, but also revealing their own stories about Ashton's pattern of co-opting, passing off as his own, miscrediting, and ultimately capitalizing on the music of smaller artists in the industry. In a music industry built on clout, this pattern is starting to emerge as a major pressure point for developing artists, and we knew that this was something we wanted to get both artists on with Bill to discuss. The conversation is obviously free-ranging and covers a number of topics, but all of them are important, which is why we've rushed this episode out to you. For our Patreon subscribers, due to the timeliness and seriousness of this episode, we opted to release this episode to both patrons and the free feed simultaneously. Don't worry, we still love you the most, and we'll make sure that your subscriptions are honored and you get early access to episodes in the future. As it stands now, you're a full week ahead of the freebies, so I hope that inflates your moral certitude further. We are putting resources in the description of this episode for anyone seeking help from sexual abuse or harm. Both Mimi Page and ill.Gates are fans of the work of RAINN, RAINN.org, and we encourage anyone who has the means to donate to this incredible organization that helps victims directly. Without further ado, let's get to this episode with Mimi Page and ill.Gates.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you are listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you're 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 listening to the Mr. Bill podcast. Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Cool. All right, I'm recording too, so we can start. Sweet. Well, yeah, thanks for taking the time to come on. I appreciate both of you coming on and talking about this because, yeah, like me and Dylan were just talking about this. It's a touchy, sensitive topic, but I think it's an important one to be talked about. And I was just explaining to Dylan, Mimi, that I read your Tumblr post yesterday, and I also watched Dylan's video that came out a few weeks ago, and I've read a bunch of stuff online about, all the stuff going on surrounding Bassnectar at the moment. And I just wanted to talk about this from all angles, I suppose, because, a Tumblr post is sort of, a written letter or an open letter, as you put it, to Lauren, and, a YouTube video is a recorded video where, you can talk and, state all the things you want to state. But I feel like a podcast is kind of interesting because it's a bit more modular and can, it has a bit more elasticity to it because there's a bunch of people talking and stuff like that. So I thought it could just be an interesting platform in which to sort of rehash all of this stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's also like, my perspective on this whole thing has been a constantly evolving thing as I've learned more and more information, and as I've kind of come to understand nuances of the whole thing that I didn't before, and as I've come to understand things that I was taking for granted and things that I was just missing from my male perspective, So even since that video, my perspective has changed a lot.
Dylan, I really respect you for that. I really do, because I think you have such a unique perspective on this whole situation because you've known Lauren for so long. And, I've worked with him for almost 9 years now. But I haven't gone as far back as you have. So I can't imagine traumatically what you've experienced, just as a friend, as a collaborator, as a teacher, and especially with all of this happening, we're experiencing this during a pandemic. And it's like, for people to talk about this on the internet as fans, like they can go to other jobs, like the thing is, this is our job. We're musicians. Like our whole industry is shut down in a big, way. And it's an extremely sensitive time to have anything come forward, and so I just admire you, Dylan, for your strength and willing to shift your perspective and listen to these women. And just as my collaborator, speak out and use your voice. I personally have been a little upset that more men haven't been speaking out. And I know more will come forward because they've texted me and said, I stand with you and I'm going to, find my words in time. But, Dylan, you have from like day one stood up and been an ally for these women and then also for me as a collaborator. So I am so grateful for you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been absolutely terrifying, it really has. And it's also like, I've known Lauren since I was a kid, like my early, like maybe like 21 or something, and I was just a kid. And, we've worked so closely together for such a long time. I mean, we kind of drifted apart after 2012, but, he's always been a really big part of my life and a huge part of my career. So it was really like, when this all first started coming out, I didn't want to believe any of it. I really like, I thought, because I mean, when you get to a certain position of fame, it's like there's always going to be people gunning to take you out. And when I talked to him about what was going on, he was basically like, look, there's this conspiracy to take me out because of my outspoken political beliefs. And there's, this is an organized takedown campaign, and they're misrepresenting the truth. And they're just trying to take me out because I spoke up about Trump, which seemed reasonable at the time. And when the evidence against Bassnectar page first came out, the very clear misrepresentations of the truth were there. And it really seemed like they were just using anything and everything that they could find to present in the way that fit their agenda. So it was easy for me at first to take Lauren's word at face value and to dismiss the claims against him.
So just before we go forward, we should, because I want this to be sort of like a self-standing podcast that someone can listen to and sort of just have all the information that we have, rather than having to listen to it and be like, what the fuck are they talking about, and have to go like Google a bunch of shit. So just to clarify, over the last like maybe month or so, well, probably before that too, but specifically over the last month, a bunch of claims have come out surrounding Lauren, aka Bassnectar, where he groomed and basically paid young women around the age of 17 and potentially 16 and whatnot for sex, and had these really weird power dynamic style relationships with them. And then off the back of that, other claims have come out, such as by yourself, Mimi, where he's just been sort of like a really shitty person to work with on a business perspective too, right? Like in terms of just how much he's paid, for instance, you out royalties and stuff like that. So just I just wanted to sort of like clarify all of these claims and get those on the table as well, so anybody who's listening can sort of follow along with the other information that we have here.
Yeah, and I'll just clarify with that. The reason why I'm even integrating my experience with this is because I don't believe in victim shaming, and a lot of these girls are getting just destroyed on Reddit. And there was one of his fans who had even doxed the girl who had said she was 17 and was in the tape, and had put her business, her location, telling people to go and take her yoga class and film her and stalk her. I won't stand for that. And I've spoken to multiple girls because just, like Dylan said, it's unfolding, and I needed to know the extent of this because, I've gone through what I've gone through, and, business wise, of course, like it's been disgusting. But, aside from that email that I shared, I had no idea that he would have gone to the depths of what he's been accused of. So when I saw the victim shaming, that's when I was like, I need to back up these women in the fact that I've seen a darker side of this human being. And I am only supporting their story because, they don't have any, at least in the fans' perspective, where is their credibility? It's their word against his. So being that I'm somebody who has been connected to him at a close level, and I guess you could say my credibility is that I personally know him. I've worked with him for almost a decade. I wanted to verify his character and that, no, this is not this humanitarian feminist who he's proclaiming to be. He is somebody completely different. And, my most important fact about my experience was that the manipulation was always there. And when I needed to speak up about him gaslighting his victim, saying, I was 17, I did not know who I was, and it was totally inappropriate. He admits it, but then says, do you really want me to find accountability in a Tennessee jail? Do you want to see me get raped in prison? I mean, that's gaslighting. That's psychological abuse. That's absolute result of a narcissistic personality disorder in regards to gaslighting and victim shaming and not acknowledging this person's experience. So that's when I needed to speak up and also share my story, that when I had confronted him about my reality and of him, taking my royalty under the mask of I'm protecting you, and I had said, look, I have real life problems, like I'm not complaining. I understand the music business is hard. I am grateful that I can even work with you. I'm grateful for your platform. I was respectful, saying, had this deal been different, I don't believe that you were being honest with me, but also had it been different, when I have, a family member who's sick and there's hospital bills, it's a humble thing to say. It's embarrassing, but had I not had that dynamic with him, I may have been at least more protected in my own life with what I was going through. And he told me to quit music. That was his response to me. It wasn't, I'm sorry that your relative is sick, and I'm so sorry that, I wasn't fair to you. He told me, well, if this is too hard for you to handle, then maybe you should find something else for work. So that's when I said, that is somebody who is totally not a humanitarian or a feminist. This is somebody completely different, and I need to support these women, and that this backs the character that they're saying he is.
Right. Yeah, the problem, and this is something Dylan and I were also just talking about off, before this recording started, is this is kind of just par for the course for the music industry, it seems like, in general. Like, this isn't a problem with just Lauren, for instance. Like, I've had this issue with other big collaborators too. Like,
as have I.
I've collaborated. Right. I mean, it's pretty normal, I feel like, as a smaller artist to collaborate with someone who's much bigger than you, who has this like giant platform, and for you to do a shitload of the work and for them to then hit you with these, like, either instead of crediting you properly as a collaborator, putting you as a feature, or giving you a shitty percentage on the publishing and the royalties. Like for instance, made us I made an entire song for someone basically, and I was credited as a proper collaborator, but they tried to hit me with only 20% of the royalties and publishing, of which I was clearly entitled 50 at least, if not more than that, because I wrote the song. But there's not much you can really do about it, right? Because then you hit with a predicament, and that predicament is, do I do this thing that could, open up a lot of doors for me and get my name into a lot of conversations that it wasn't in before? Or do I, and stand my ethical ground and moral ground of being like, no, like I'm worth this much because I did X, Y, Z work. So why should I take this shitty percentage, or do I take the shitty percentage and then try to do some, as you said in your open letter, Mimi, mental gymnastics to try and figure out, to try and justify that low percentage that you're getting, and then make up the rest of the value to you in this exposure-y way, right? And that, unfortunately, I'm assuming Lauren did that with a lot of collaborators, if he's done that to you, and potentially Dylan as well. But like, that's not a thing that he just does. Like, that is just standard for the music industry in general. And I think that's the thing we should talk about too.
And I mean, I think that's also why I was like, people are like, well, why didn't you talk about the professional abuse that you had suffered until now? It seems like you're using the sexual abuse of the victims as a vehicle to promote your own agenda and promote your own grievances, right? And to that criticism, I would answer that the reason why I did not mention the professional abuse that I had suffered, and we can get into that. I've got some stories that would blow your hair back, but the reason why I didn't say anything is because it would have been very much to my detriment to have mentioned those things in the situation prior to the revelations coming out. And that it would have, I mean, even just telling the fan base, like I had a real eye-opening moment in this whole thing because I mean, the big turning point for me was when Rachel shared her recording of Lauren incriminating himself, where he admits to having sex with her when she was 17 and tries to manipulate her into not speaking up by
saying like, do you want me to go to jail and stuff?
Yeah,
like
that to me, because there was no room for editorial bent on that. That recording stands alone. That recording stands by itself as a piece of real evidence in which he very much incriminates himself and very much shows that he is mentally not in a place of accountability. He's not in a place of compassion. He's not in a place of taking responsibility for his actions whatsoever. He's just trying to manipulate his way out of prison. That audio very clearly shows that. So that was the big turning point for me. And then when so I mentioned that in my long video that I made that half-hour long video that, where I was basically trying to see the problem from all sides and put it in perspective, where it wasn't just like, hey, let's crucify this guy. And it was just like, let's look rationally at what's going on. Let's look rationally at what can we know from the evidence as presented. What should we be skeptical of? What should we take into consideration as real, And I think that video was fairly well received by the Bassnectar community. But after speaking with Rachel and after seeing that that one Bassnectar fan who started that Reddit, the Reddit/r/support Bassnectar, where they doxed Rachel and encouraged gang stalking of her. Once I saw that, I made another post where I was like, look, those of you in the Bassnectar community need to be on the lookout for this gang stalking behavior and this doxing and this, because this is wrong. And if the Bassnectar community ever stood for anything, it should stand for compassion and justice for these abused women, and that, it's on the community to stop this gang stalking and stop this doxing and stop this victim shaming. And once I said that, there were members of the community that were very triggered by this, and just thousands of angry Bassnectar fans just started coming for me. And it was like nothing I've ever experienced. It was crazy. Like, I was just having anxiety attacks. I was just getting it from all angles. Like, all of my social medias everywhere was just getting blown up. There were Reddit threads about it. There were Twitter threads about it. There were people on Facebook just coming for me.
This is in response to the video that you uploaded
No,
on
this
YouTube?
is in response to some tweets where I called out the victim shaming and encourage the community
Right.
to stop the victim shaming, to be vigilant.
And Bassnectar fans were angry at you for saying maybe don't stalk this woman.
That was what triggered the community, and that to me was just fucking crazy. And like I've been just reeling from that, ever since. Like I've never, I've had people be like, "Oh, you're a fag with your weird hair. Your music sucks." Like I've had that my whole life. That I'm used to. That's something I can bear. But
So I actually got a message on my Instagram, maybe just after you sent one of these tweets, and somebody said to me like, "Oh, there's a reason why your music's been, or why you've been in your career hasn't progressed in the last like 2 decades. It's because your music's shit and like fuck you, you're an idiot. You should like stop hating on people online." And I was like, "Wait, what the fuck? Who is this guy?" And I was like, "Do you think I'm someone else?" And then like a minute later, he responded. Oh no, sorry, he's seen the message, didn't respond for like 2 hours. And I was like, oh, he probably realized like I wasn't the guy. I kind of like put a bunch of information together in my head, and I was like, I think he thinks because of the Mr. Ill.Gates thing.
Yeah, you probably got collateral damage from the fucking shitstorm.
Yeah, I got one collateral damage from this.
But yeah, that really fucked me up, man. And I mean, since then I've been just like stress dreams every night, and like, I mean, last night, like, I just want this to fucking be over. I just want it to stop. I just want to focus on, I mean, it's a crazy time right now. Like, Portland is in like open revolt, and there's, these brown shirts rounding people up and throwing them into vans. Like, it's like the country is convulsing with chaos and turmoil, and I've got a family and a 1.5-year-old daughter to worry about in this, while my entire music industry has collapsed. And, I'm like trying to figure out how I'm going to pay the rent, let alone my taxes. And it's just like, I've got other things to worry about than thousands of angry people out for blood. And it's just like, and I mean, my studio, like if this was a video podcast, you could see the wall behind me. Like I made custom wallpaper for my studio with this software that you can print on your walls. And I cut out 400 plus pieces of printer paper and wheat pasted them to walls, to each of the walls, to form these giant images. And the main image on the back wall that you come into my studio is the one time, like Lauren had always been promising that he would, help my career, that he would do blog posts for me, to throw a spotlight on me, that he would have me open for him, that he would take me on tour. He'd always been just dangling that fucking carrot, telling me he's going to release my album on his label, and then I should book a tour. And then as soon as I booked the tour, he did this to me twice, where I booked a tour getting ready for my album to come out on his label. And then at the last minute after the tour was booked, he was like, yeah, surprise, album's not coming out, fuck you. And then I have all these promoters who are like, yo, you booked this tour under the pretense that your album was coming out on Bassnectar's label, and now it's just like not. So fuck you. And they like, it damaged my relationship very seriously with all these promoters. He did this to me twice. The second time too, I made him promise that it wasn't going to be like the last time, and like an idiot, I fell for his manipulation again. And it's just like, it's just really damaged my relationship with all of these promoters. But through it all, I was trying to see things in a positive light. I was trying to keep my eye on the good that it did for my career. And I was trying to remember the good times. And I was trying to remember that, probably half my fans came to me through him. So in my starry-eyed optimism, I had made this mural of the family photo from that one night that I got to be direct support for him in Atlantic City. And my whole wall, it's like 8 feet high, 20 feet wide, Bassnectar family photo. All these happy, screaming kids having the night of their life. Lauren in the center of it, just Bassnectar logos everywhere. And that's the wall that's behind me at this moment. Like I haven't had the heart and the time to go over it. And I'm just like, I'm confronted with that wall in the room that I'm supposed to make my music. And, I'm just all these fans, like I look in the eyes of these fans on this wall, and I see the devotion in their eyes and the passion that they had for this project. And then I just getting attacked like crazy online. And like last night, man, like I just fucking needed to just be away from everything, because I've got a screaming child in the house. I've got my wife to worry about. I've got all these financial problems. I just fucking like curled up into a ball in the vocal booth for like an hour, and it's just so fucked up, and then I was sitting there and like my phone alerts started going off and I looked and people were donating to my PayPal. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. And I guess like Mimi's open letter had really kind of shifted the tide. So I wasn't like the only one standing up for these women anymore. And I wasn't the only one that was the target of all this hate. And, I guess the message had gotten out in the community that, about how, Mimi was taken advantage of. And I mean, the cover photo for the Bassnectar Evidence Against Bassnectar page is the Take You Down EP. It's the Take You Down track. The singer for Take You Down, this girl Miranda, had her own drama with Bassnectar, and she was kind of like the head of the effort to take him down. And ironically, in the track Take You Down was the one that she did the vocals for with her own drama story. But the intro for that track, Lauren took from another collab that we did. And he basically says like, oh yeah, can I use some of the ideas from that collab for something else? And I was like, I don't know, whatever, sure, just let me know. Let me know, like whatever, But I didn't think that can I use some of the ideas for another collab? That's not, can I use verbatim the work you did and not give you credit and not give you any royalties?
Right. So just
that's just like, it's just not what he asked, So I had agreed to that. And then he went and just took my intro and just used it for Take You Down. No royalties, no nothing.
Did he show you the song afterwards or say, hey,
No, it just came out.
That's theft.
It just came out.
Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
So you had similar experiences too, Mimi, right?
Mine was different, actually. That's why I had spelled it out. I had taken a music business course in college, and I knew about writing and publishing. I was already signed up with BMI, and one of the main things I was taught was always fight for your publishing, because as a songwriter, that's what you have, like, especially with streaming, even if, because the royalty rate is so small on Spotify and Pandora and all these different platforms, to always keep your publishing in case you get a sync deal, in case your music gets on a TV show or whatever. So my whole deal was, at least I was the one who had said, well, what about my writing and my publishing? Because that's what I was going to really fight for. And obviously I spelled that whole situation. I don't need to rehash it. But in my open letter, I talk about that. But then he had insisted, told me music doesn't make money. And, the philosophy...
I got the same shit from him, too. He was like, music doesn't make money. You should have a backup plan. Like, music should be a hobby. Don't do music. Like, it's not... Like, he gave me that same fucking shit.
And he also told you to quit music, too, right?
Yeah. He told me that. And then every time we talk about my career, he's like, it's a miracle that it even worked out for you. Like, it's like, it could fall apart at any time.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind. He's so massively successful and well respected. I don't understand the mental position where you can look at an up and coming artist and claim you're a humanitarian, you're for equality, you have a nonprofit to help people, and then you're going to look at somebody who's given you their life force. Your creativity is your life force, and you have bills to pay. If you have a plumber, if you have, you go to Starbucks, you order a drink, your barista gets paid. If I'm writing you as, an independent artist and you have a massive platform, you're already wealthy, how are you going to request 100% of, and then that's where the whole, like we're talking about in the industry, which I really want to push to change. It's not fair. And we can't continue this where we are leveraging fame and clout and power as some type of negotiation tool.
You know what it is? It's trickle down fame economics.
Right, kind of like the top 1% have like, 99% of the wealth or whatever. It's kind of the same in the music industry on a micro scale to global economics, right?
Yeah, and I'll speak to that because I we've all had shitty deals, and that's the thing. I understand, you gotta work hard in this current system. You gotta pay your dues, and eventually you can work your way towards what I consider an unfair system. I don't like the way it's run, but if it's run like this, then I'm gonna work hard and I'm gonna try to participate because that's all I can do. But when you have, and this is what is so mind-boggling to this entire community, when you have somebody who is claiming they're a humanitarian and they have a nonprofit and they're saying I'm a feminist and I am for equal rights and all of these different things and have a movement about it, then you're going to treat people behind the scenes like this. It's beyond hypocrisy. It's corruption.
And I think like one of the things that people had a real issue with in my video was when I compared Lauren's sexual abuses to Motley Crue and was like, hey, Motley Crue did way worse shit than he did in some ways, like in terms of an immediate, like, so, I mean, I don't think they were more mentally abusive to people, but they were definitely more physically abusive to some of their fans. But in saying that, I was not trying to normalize the abuse that he meted out to these young women. I was trying to put it in perspective and say like, hey, he's not the first rock star to abuse his position. He's not the first, I mean, the Beatles did Led Zeppelin did horrific things to some of the young fans that they had sex with. But Motley Crue, they're not going around claiming to be feminists. They're not going around claiming Motley Crue is not just a solo project, it's a collaboration. They're not claiming Motley Crue is the sum of the efforts of all these beautiful people that I'm trying to uplift. Wow.
Right, they don't have this face of like, you can do anything. And like,
yeah.
This whole like hopeful sort of like big peace and love attitude.
Yeah, they were pigs. And they were like, look at us, we're pigs. We're moral degenerates, like fucking flag waving moral degenerates. And there's an honesty to that I think made it, I'm not saying acceptable, but it made their version of abuse at least a little bit less shocking, a little bit less surprising. It was almost like they were just like flag waving hedonists. Whereas Lauren, he went around claiming to be this beacon of light and virtue, and
this kind of plays into his manipulation, right? Like it seems like he's just a manipulative and greedy person, and therefore like he wouldn't wave the flag of being that.
I don't think he even realizes what he was doing. Like, I think in his mind, he wasn't manipulative. In his mind, he wasn't greedy. In his mind, he was just playing the game, And in some of the interviews, when you see him talking about like, what's justice to the anteater is injustice to the ant type of thing, and that whole moral relativism of it. I think that he really saw himself as an enlightened person, and he legitimately saw himself as a force for good in the world, and that his noble ends justified his messy means. And I think he did truly believe that, and I think he does still truly believe that, and that's why he's not taking responsibility, and that's why he's not being compassionate to his victims, and that's why he's not owning his mistakes. Is he does, like a classic narcissist, believe that he serves this higher purpose that makes it all okay.
And that's why we have a law in place to protect children and teenagers, because nobody's above the law. And that's the miracle of him confessing to statutory rape and then another audio leaking out where he's talking about, yeah, well, there's loopholes and they could try to spin this like I was child trafficking. And the thing is, he knows what he was doing. He knows what he was doing to these younger girls that were underage, and he's admitted to it. So I don't understand in his mind, logically, if he is, in alignment with being enlightened and for the good of the world, then you know the law. And he's really playing God and saying, I'm above the law. I can do whatever I want, and it doesn't matter who I affect. And, so I would argue, maybe he wasn't totally convinced the whole time that he was doing the right thing in his own warped mind. He was well aware of the law. And so,
when I spoke with him at the end, he was in terror. He was just like completely, he felt he was a victim of a smear campaign that had no foundation. He felt that he was cornered, and he was just doing everything that he could to stay out of prison. And in that last conversation that we had, he was like, look, I'm, don't tell anyone this, but I have a gun. I'm contemplating suicide, and I need you to come to my defense. And I took that at face value, and I one last time fell for his manipulation and came out in public and defended him. And because I thought he was telling the truth. I thought, why would my friend of 20 years lie to my face like that? There was no room in my mind for the possibility that could have been a lie at that point. So I went to bat and I defended him. And then when the truth started to come out and the truth started to make itself apparent to me, I felt so sick to my stomach to know that I would have come out, publicly defended someone who did such indefensible things. And in that moment, when I heard that audio where he incriminates himself speaking with Rachel, in that moment, like, I remember I just broke out into a cold sweat, and I was in this very room with this giant wall-sized family photo that I spent hours and hours and hours with a team of my friends putting up. And I just remember the truth just like washing over me, and I could feel this like I don't know if you remember the first time you were ever screamed at by like a high school or like a grade school principal or something, where you just feel that wave of stress hormones wash through your body, and you get like goosebumps and but in the worst way, and you feel this it's like little ripples of this hormone flooding your bloodstream, and I could feel that. And it was like my guts were flipping and churning, and I was sweating, and I felt sick, and it was just like, now I'm in the midst of this fray. Now I've put myself out there. I defended this indefensible person, and I put myself on the front line because I fell for that manipulation, and I took his words at face value. And then suddenly I'm in the fucking thick of it. And I've got people who know the victims coming at me on one side, and I know they're right. And then I've got all of these Bassnectar fans on the other side that are like, fuck yeah, Lauren's innocent. Be the champion of the truth. Tell these lying bitches what's up. And it's like, the whole time I'm just thinking about my 1.5-year-old daughter, and I'm thinking about the fact that she's inevitably going to learn about this in maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years, maybe 20, but she's inevitably going to learn about this. And she's going to Google it, and she's going to read all of this shit, and she's going to ask herself, what kind of man is my father? And, sitting there where I know the truth, but I've very emphatically aligned myself with the wrong fucking side because of this manipulation. Dude, that disconnect and that pivot, it was like my head bouncing off a fucking wall, and I've been reeling ever since, and, my position has been kind of evolved. It evolved fucking slowly because it's a tough pill to swallow to know that your music, the thing that you care about more than anything else, could have been used as a tool by an abuser to manipulate and take advantage of underage girls, that your music, my template, that this Ableton templates like that, building those Ableton templates, I made the first ever commercial Ableton templates. Those templates were my ticket out of poverty. That was like a huge portion of my life's work, that template was being used every night to perform and to pull the fucking wool over these people's eyes and to get them ready to be as cult members, to get them ready to be as victims, that my songs were getting played every night, that my template was getting used every night in stadiums full of people waiting to be fucking groomed. It's just like, it's like, I'm still so fucked up by it, man. And I remember last night when I was curled up into a ball in that vocal booth, and like a couple of these donations started coming in. It wasn't like a ton of money, but it was something, and I just remember seeing those come in and just being like, I'm gonna get fucking therapy, because like my back is against the wall financially right now. Like my place is $5,000 a month. It was all predicated on, like, I was making $5,000 a week as a DJ before this fucking COVID shit happened, and like my whole lifestyle and everything. Like my health insurance is $2,000 a month. My rent is $5,000 a month, and then there's food and running the dojo and all of my employees and everything. And it's just like, I'm on a fucking razor's edge, And I just remember seeing those like couple little donations coming in. I just like, just before this call, I fucking signed up for therapy. I cannot fucking wait.
Dude, honestly, therapy is sick. I just started doing it for other reasons, which we don't have to get into. But yeah, I wanted to talk about like the idea of your music being used for kind of this like mass manipulation or whatever. And you talked about this in your Tumblr post, Mimi, where you were saying, there's people who have gotten tattoos of butterflies and stuff, which is the song that you wrote.
Dude, people have Open Your Eyes Bassnectar tattoos, and that's an ill.Gates fucking track I wrote for my dead dog. That has nothing to do with him. His remix isn't even different. It just has a Sex Drake mix down. That's it. People have Open Your Eyes Bassnectar tattoos, like full fucking side of their torso. I'm just like, do your homework. Fuck.
Yeah. Well, I'll speak to the tattoo because I've opened my DMs to survivors who are triggered by this because, my dynamic with Lauren was a professional one, and it was a very negative one, and it was a psychologically damaging one. But, being a sexual abuse survivor myself, when you're affiliated with somebody who is a predator and you don't know it, and your own fans who have branded their body. And, many of the victims I called said, I found him through your song. I thought that was him. And when I was like, this whole time, when him manipulating me, saying, you're so ethereal, you're so, your music is so dreamy and all this stuff. And I'm like, it feels good to be seen and acknowledged from somebody with a platform for your true aesthetic, and being an independent electronic artist. I'm not a pop star, like I'm paving my own way with my own sound. So I felt seen and heard by him. So, for him to get that out of me and then take full production credit for it, and then have these girls think that ethereal feminine sound was coming from him, that euphoric experience he created. It's, and then for them to get the tattoos, and then many of the girls were lured in by that. It was such a deception. I had spoken to a girl that was having like a panic attack because she didn't know how to get the tattoo off her body. And that's really intense. When I really made that epiphany, I was with my therapist, and I just said, I feel like I was bait. I feel like my creativity was bait. I was never ever respected. I was used. And I threw up. I physically threw up. And Dylan, like you, when you said you were in fetal position, like I have really struggled with this really bad. And it's just triggered my own, because we hold trauma on a cellular level. We hold it in our body.
I'm learning that.
Yeah. And so it's like you can logically move on and say, yeah, that's in the past. That was, in this year, and I'm a better person for it. And I'll put it in my music. But if you ever do breath work, if you ever do tapping, if you ever do EMDR, where you're physically releasing trauma, like if you clench your jaw or you grind your teeth or you have physical tics, from PTSD, that's your trauma. And so a lot of it's subconscious. So I was having these like tremors through my body when I made that connection. And I did a whole EMDR session with my therapist where
What's
I was
EMDR for the lay person in the audience?
Sure. So EMDR is a really powerful technique where you're doing memory recall. And you're trying to, and I'm not really going to explain this the best because I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but basically I'm doing a version where I'm tapping different pressure points of my body, like my temples, my forehead, and I am going to, I'll be talking about a trauma. And, I talked about this trauma, and then I will try to replace that pain with something better as I'm tapping. So it's like a physical release.
So what does
as
EMDR
well.
stand for?
Gosh, I could Google it right now. Let me see.
It is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a form of psychotherapy developed by Francine Shapiro, and it's being in which the person being treated is asked to recall distressing images. Let's see.
That's totally it. So what happens is I'm trailing her fingers with my eyes while I'm tapping different pressure points on my body. So I am getting out of like my logical brain, which has that defense mechanism, which all of us, we want to distract. We don't want to go into the trauma. We don't want to go into the pain.
Dude, I'm honestly, I'm struggling to even remain in this conversation right now. This is fucking like my palms are sweating. Like it's a reflex.
I'm so sorry. I love you. I'm here. I'm
here.
Yeah,
I love you. I love you too. This is just fucking
right
hard,
here.
man. And I don't know. Like the idea of people fucking listening to this is just like.
But guess what? This is what 2020 is about. There is no disguise. There is no mask. We are fully exposed. We are raw. We are suffering. It is massively painful. But guess what? It needs to happen in order to heal. And that's what therapy is. You are you're reopening wounds because they never healed. And in order, it's like surgery. You can put all of the Band-Aids on a gaping wound that you can, but until it's like a gunshot, you got to remove the bullet. You've got the poison in there. So that's the hard part. The physical body goes right back to that trauma, and you are physicalizing it. And so just follow me here, because this whole EMDR session, when I was dealing with this and I was realizing my song was baiting young girls, and I was a young girl at multiple ages of abuse, I was physicalizing that, and I couldn't handle it. I wanted to die. I was literally shaking and convulsing with her, and she kept saying, "Okay, breathe," and I was just physically releasing it. And I'm lucky. I do equine therapy as well as EMDR, so I'm around horses. I'm very blessed because I'm in the country. But what helped me was I was outside. I was looking at the trees. I was looking at the ground. I was remembering I was safe and that I wasn't with a predator. I was safe, but my body was still there. So it was like I was totally having to realign my entire experience to be present in the moment. And what happens is, once you go into that pain, then she says, now go to, what's your happy place? And for me, it's my garden. And she goes, tell me about your garden. And I'm doing the tapping and I'm following her eyes. And she's like, and I'm sobbing, and I'm shaking. And she goes, tell me about your garden. And I'm telling her about my eggplants and my flowers and the puppy that is helping me water my plants and loves to just jump in my water hose and the sun on my face. And I started to replace that pain and that trauma with goodness and peace and light. And what it's doing to the brain, I mean, this is why, healing, it's a chemical thing. Talk therapy is amazing, but this is why I deeply believe in like the study of this tapping and this EMDR, because it's in the body, and breath work. When you're tying your breath, that's your life force. You have shallow breaths when you're traumatized. And so when you deepen your breath, you're able to root and oxygenate every cell in your body. And then we get sick if we hold on to trauma and we're anxious. And so when we're able to relax, then we can really heal. We don't only heal our psyche, we heal the body. We heal our soul. So, to speak to this trauma of these girls, that unlocked all my trauma. And once I was able to work through this with my therapist, I was able to continue speaking to these women and men who can't handle, these tattoos. And in my own clarity after my therapy, which is why therapy is incredible, because all you can ask for is clarity. When you're foggy and you're in your emotion, you can't think. You don't even know what to do. You're traumatized. You're in fight or flight mode. But in my clarity, after I've been able to process this, I've been able to tell these fans that, what is the butterfly at all? Because I won't let Lauren's actions take away the light and the love and my entire soul in this song. I won't let his actions take that away from me. So, when you got that tattoo, what did that tattoo mean to you? Several of my fans, they had people that died. And this song represented, somebody who passed away or, a feeling of transformation in their lives. And I said, let this pain right now be your transformation. Let this moment be the ultimate transformation, and that we can turn this horrific experience into something beautiful together. We can redefine this. And with the Bass logo, what does that stand for? This is the mass awakening that we can't continue to hurt each other anymore. This industry needs to change. The preying on young girls needs to change. The idea of groupie culture, why is a grown man with millions of dollars hunting little girls that aren't fully developed mentally yet and luring them with their power and their fame and their money? We need to address this. It's romanticized in our culture, and it's psychologically damaging to these girls, because later on when they grow up and they're in their maturity and in their power, they're like, what the hell was I doing? Because this person dropped me after I got too old. And once I started thinking for myself, they dropped me. I was used. In the moment, of course.
Well, I think for maybe those who are not super familiar with the way everything went down, I think that it's important to point out at this point that, and let's say like the Datsik or Space Jesus cases, those guys are just like, hey, we're here for the party. It's party time. Hey, young girls, do you want to party with us? We're all partying. Everybody gets high. They have regrettable sex. They go on their way. That sucks. That's gross. And there are definitely like some stories from those cases where it certainly seems like they were like, hey, let's get these girls wasted until they don't know what's going on and then have sex with them, which is rape, right? But they weren't sending emails asking them for help with their homework. They weren't asking these girls to write them essays. They weren't trying to be a father figure. They weren't trying to be a life coach. They weren't telling them to move cities. They weren't telling them to break up with their boyfriends. They weren't telling them that they needed to, completely rearrange their life to be at the beck and call of Datsik or Space Jesus secretly flying around to hotels, getting thousands of dollars of hush money or payments for sex. I don't know what you want to call that. They, there's like, yeah, they were sober when they made the decision to sleep with Lauren, but the levels of twisted manipulation and grooming and mental domination are in many ways worse than an impulsive, spur of the moment, drugged out rape,
Well, yeah, I think it's way worse because, well, not way worse, but I agree. I definitely think it's worse because I think it's just like, it's a new level of manipulation. Like one of the other things that I read somewhere was that when he'd ask these young girls to go to hotels and meet up with him, he would ask them to lie to their parents and say they were going to go hang out with a teacher called Gabe or something like that.
Yeah, it's like par for the course. Like the more of these accounts that come out, and Mimi has like I've been privy to some of what's not in the public sphere, but Mimi has just, by virtue of her open letter, by virtue of her positioning in this, and by virtue of her being a woman and a survivor herself, she's kind of created this safe space for these victims to reach out. And she's had much more direct and much more intimate contact with the victims and with the truth that's not in the public sphere. And I just want to say, you know, like, I want to commend Mimi for the leadership role that she's adopted in all of this, because I was still way more under the manipulation than I thought. And Mimi really opened my eyes to the truth, and she opened my eyes to things that I just didn't get because I'm a dude and because I'm a married dude who's just not in groupie culture. You know, I've been with the same same woman for 14 years. You know, I've never fucked a groupie. I've always like just been, you know, just completely like out of that world. So I assumed that meant, you know, I was above making mistakes when it comes to understanding what it's like. You know, I just like, there were just things that I was taking for granted because I was a dude, because I was just not in that world that Mimi really opened my eyes to. But her, like, she has so much more of an intimate knowledge of what's not in the public sphere, and just hearing some of what the real victims went through makes me feel like, you know, even just sharing that I was curled up in a ball in my vocal booth and that I was accepting donations, it makes me feel like, who am I to accept that? Who am I to be so traumatized when there are these victims that have been quietly suffering outside of the public sphere? Where's their relief fund? Where's their therapy money? You know? And it's just like, oh God, talking about this shit is so hard. Anyway,
well, let me speak to that, because I had a miracle email today, and I have a call set up for next week. But with my first letter, it was my first statement, where I was just, you know, it was before my open letter, and I just wanted to state my feelings, because I stood with these girls. I had conversations. I verified evidence. You know, because like I said, I don't believe in, quote, cancel culture without verifying evidence. I understand that people like to sabotage people, but I will always stand with a woman and say, I want to hear your story. I want to see, you know, like, sometimes even word of mouth, you know, like that is proof. You know, sometimes you don't have evidence, but these girls have emails. They have, you know, video.
I just say, how could he be so dumb as to send them these fucking emails? How could he be so dumb as to make these phone call recordings?
I'll speak to that. I think this is a huge miracle. I think it's a huge miracle. I don't even want to give it power that he has anything to do with this. I think it's a divine miracle that we are giving these girls the chance to heal, and the whole music industry can be accountable to shifting their behavior and their culture. I'm going to call it out as a miracle. But the miracle today is that, you know, from my first statement, I said, with the small royalty that I do have, you know, this is why in my open letter, I wanted to clarify, I'm no millionaire at all. I'm an independent artist, and I struggle as well. I'm also in a pandemic, you know, I have been totally, you know, scared. And that's why I even shared my last email with Lauren, is that I said there was a food shortage here. You know, and I started growing my own food, not because I can, but like, I was scared that not only I, you know, wouldn't have food, but also my neighbors. So I started growing one of every vegetable, and I'm like, I'm just going to start farming just in case, you know. And that's why I was like, oh, the pumpkin seeds, $250 and not crediting me. And I still haven't received that payment to be on his new album. You know, that just shows his mentality. But, you know, speaking to the miracle today is that in my first statement, I said I wanted to donate my small portion of my writing and my publishing to RAIN or any nonprofits that, you know, focus and specialize in sexual abuse. And my dream, and why I called in Lauren and said, you know, not just me, but all collaborators, if you have been spending our bad deals, the royalties you took from us to pay off, silence, and hurt these women without us knowing, that's not okay with me. And going forward, as you quit music, that's not unemployment. That is you collecting still off our hard-earned creativity. And
yeah, just for those who haven't been following this that closely, Lauren referred to himself as unemployed.
Right, after he was like, oh, I didn't do anything, and that is why I'm stepping down from my $40 million career.
Yeah. So I had just said I would love to request from him a reconsideration of his dealings with us, with every collaborator. Every collaborator he's never credited, every collaborator he has totally manipulated out of royalties and then used for this corrupt, disgusting, illegal lifestyle. I would request that we get our royalties back. And that's why I called him in. But with what I do have, which I said is my 33% writing and my publishing, with the small percentage that I do have in order to tell these girls with my tattoos on their bodies, if you hear this song, it's going to rain. The royalties are going to a nonprofit. But if I'm able to get the means in some way, if he's able to rectify this, I want to start my own nonprofit, and I want to hire the ambassadors. I want to hire the victims. I want to lead with sound therapy. I want to lead with meditation. There's incredible artists like Born, who the incredible rapper and lyricist who's been on so many different songs of Lauren's, many uncredited. He has an incredible artistry where he's doing sound healing bowls and he's rapping, and it's a very spiritual experience. I want to be able to give him a platform through this nonprofit to help heal survivors. His victim, Rachel, she's a yoga instructor. She's helping heal people, even though she's hurting and needs to heal. I would love to give her the platform through a nonprofit to teach yoga, restorative yoga. There's Dylan. I want you to give your beautiful teaching and your music to survivors. We could all work together, and all these ambassadors who are writing me that are saying,
I feel like, like we really gotta, like, there's gotta be some kind of fun for them or something, because it's like they've just been there sidelined in silence, and seeing what's happened to Rachel, I can understand why they're only speaking to us in private. Like, I can understand that. And even Rachel, she's like, fuck, I just, like, the idea of going to court with this, or the idea of, like, going forwards and just facing, like, I got the fucking wrath of the Wooks just from telling them to stop doxing people, And it's like, I can't imagine, like if you're publicly anything but a Jane Doe, you're a fucking target. Like, I've known Lauren for a long time, and, like, I saw people leave shit on his front doorstep. He would have people calling him up being like, hey, if you ever need a mass shooter, I got you. Or, like, people would be like, oh, I was going to kill myself, but I thought I'd reach out to you first. And he'd have to fucking talk them off the ledge, or talk them off of being a mass shooter, or whatever. It just comes from being that famous. It comes from having that cult level following. So, his followers, some of his followers that are batshit fucking crazy. They're not all, most of them are wonderful, compassionate, loving people. Most of them are on the right side. Most of them saw the truth and turned around. But there is a subsection of these people that are fucking batshit crazy and dangerous. And, it's like these victims that are in silence, I'm sure Lauren probably paid some of them to not take him to court, but there's probably many that weren't like, oh, let me call up old fucking Low Dog. He's calling me in. Let's give him a fucking dingle, see if he wants to cut me a check. I'm sure there's a huge portion of them that are just like fucking just silently suffering,
There are, and I without going into too much, I had spoken to somebody who, had a really hard time telling her story, and I didn't seek her out. Multiple friends of hers had told me she was wanting to tell her story, and I, had been texting, and I said, hi, I would love to hear it. She was just not mentally ready, and she finally was. And oh my God, like, that's why I'm saying, like, it's private, and, I don't want to go into too much, but these girls are suffering. They are suffering. And like I say, it's not just a story. Like, they have evidence. It's very descriptive. And, back to, RAIN, the organization reached out to me because they're aware of my open letter. And which, was amazing. So the miracle is I have a call with them next week. And so even if Lauren is going to ghost everybody and walk away with his millions and do nothing, that's why I'm saying, like, the only thing we can do right now to help these women heal is to, try to use what we have. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to speak to this nonprofit next week. I want to see if there's any way that I could use some of the ambassadors that have, passion, and they don't have a place to exercise that passion. If they want to.
As soon as we got that link, I will blast it to my whole mailing list. I'll blast it to everybody. I'm sure Bill will blast it too. Like, as soon as we have that link,
Yeah, because it's early stages, but my dream is if we have a platform, because we're still in COVID and a lot of people are inside, and that if we are able to have like a subsection of a powerful nonprofit and focus on sound healing and meditation and do Zoom groups where we can all share our stories together and give each other, because sometimes all you need is an ear to listen to you. You don't need to do the EMDR. You don't need to do the equine therapy. Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody. So if we can have a type of platform together with this specific community and we can use that, that is healing right now.
I just want to put it out there too. I just want to say, talking to you, Mimi, has completely, as someone who's been through therapy and who like knows about processing this stuff, like, I didn't, this is relatively new to me. I've suffered some abuse in my life, but it was like, I always just kind of like stiff upper lip, keep calm and carry on. Just didn't really address it, and this is the first time that I've had something this major, that really fucked me up at such a deep level, because it's a betrayal of 20 years of trust, So
it can like mess up your whole opinion or view on like what a trustworthy person could be, and just make you sort of very paranoid from a root level of everyone going forward, right?
Yeah, it's like I am a different person after this. But talking to you, Mimi, and like Mimi was there for me, man. Like, we had many conversations that were like just 2-hour long late night fucking phone conversations where she just talked me through all this and really helped me to find my strength in it, and help me to just face facts and face reality for what it is, and not just believe what feels good to believe, but actually find a place where I have the strength to believe what is true and to act coming from a place of truth, and not just what's efficacious or what's convenient. So I would like to put it out there that I know there are all of these victims out there that are suffering in silence, and I just want to put it out there that I'm here to listen, and that I'm here too. It's not just Mimi, but I'm easy enough to get a hold of. Just like send me a DM on Twitter or Reddit or whatever. But I'll give you my phone number. I'll make time. I'll fucking listen, because as much as my suffering sucks, I at least stood to gain from the abuse, because of the trickle-down fame economics. I at least had some career advantages with which I could justify my continued acceptance of the abuse that I was suffering. Whereas, I know a lot of these victims, it's like, they really didn't have anything to gain. It was just all manipulation. It was just all smoke and mirrors, So I just want to put it out there, like, if you have been a victim, I'm here for you. I'll listen,
Dylan, you're so awesome. Thank you for saying that. And, as a man, I can't tell you on behalf of women how powerful that is. Thank you so much for being the leader that you are, because we need you as an industry professional. And also, your gender speaks volumes to other men. You give inspiration to other men to be there for women. So you're being a leader right now, and I massively respect you, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, thanks, Mimi. I couldn't have made these realizations, and I couldn't have had this personal growth without you. So thank you.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap this up. But I wanted to say thanks to both of you for coming on and talking about this. I think it's really cool to have this conversation. And I'll link, Mimi, I'll link your open letter to Lauren in the episode description, and Dylan, I'll link your video that you posted to YouTube also in the episode description. But if there's anywhere else that people can find either of you, where's the best place to do that?
I'm at ill.Gates music almost everywhere. It's ill-Gates on SoundCloud. But I'm ill.Gates music almost everywhere. ill.Gates.com if you want to download my music for free. But, you know, if you want to actually DM me, I'm easiest on Twitter probably, or Reddit. And yeah, I just, you know, Bill, like I honestly, when this was proposed, I wasn't so sure about it, but I think it is the right thing to do. But man, I'm fucking like sweating, man. Like it's so hard to fucking talk about this shit, man. Like it really is.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that. I just want to tell everyone listening, you know, like this is a giant collective trauma, and that's what I tried to address in my open letter. And you know, I just did a YouTube video to follow up because I'm getting bullied on Reddit. You know, people are trying to say I'm coming at, you know, trying to clout chase and shit for trying to stand up for these victims. And the only reason why I've shared my story, I waited almost 9 years to do it, is because when you have victims coming forward, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And you get so much hatred for it. So the best you can do is stand up for them and say, I can validate that this person who did this to you was not a good person, because this is what my experience was. So, you know, I would just ask everyone listening to open their hearts and use this as an opportunity to be kind and compassionate, and, you know, not just to, you know, the victims, you know, listen to their story, be there for them, you know, and then listen to the other people in your own community, in your own life, in your workplace, in your schools. You know, maybe your neighbor is suffering right now. So really open your heart to the world around you and be there for people. This is really, really important. And that's how we can transmute the pain of this. And, you know, I'm grateful for this podcast because mainstream media did one sweep of, yep, Bassnectar stepped down, you know, and that's shock value. But,
and then, dude, the next week they were like, Billboard was like, hey, check it out. Album's charting.
Exactly.
So the next week.
I'm so grateful for, you know, all the independent media, the electronic music blogs that have picked up my open letter, that they're discussing what's going on. Props to Elephant Journal and Medium for speaking about deeper issues, and, you know, all the electronic music blogs that have picked up this, and then this podcast. You know, if we're gonna change this industry and then the world, we have to talk about the hard stuff. That's just what has to happen. And it's uncomfortable. And something like this, yes, everybody's world is upside down and it's really hard, but there's beauty on the other side of this. That's what healing is. That's why there's a rainbow after rain. There's beauty when you go through the worst parts of life. Diamonds are formed under the worst conditions. Butterflies emerge after dying in a chrysalis. They liquefy. You know, there's beauty after the pain. So if we can all just band together and go through this pain together, we're going to come out the other side stronger and more beautiful than ever.
Yeah, that's a really great way to look at it. I think it's awesome that you're looking at this as like a possible, like, you know, pivot point for positivity
in our culture and in our world.
Right. Well, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate both of you.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Thanks for reaching out, man. Like I didn't know if it was a good idea, basically up until that last speech of Mimi's, and now I feel good about it.
All right, good stuff.
But thank you, Bill. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Mr. Bill podcast. These episodes are edited and uploaded twice a week by Robert Fumo of 303podpro.com. You can also support the show, get early access to episodes, and hear bonus content by going to patreon.com/Mr. Bill's Tunes and becoming a patron. Please rate and review on iTunes unless you're going to be a little shit about it. And all the links to my various platforms are at MrBillsTunes.com. Thank you.